Hey, everybody. It's so fun to see some of the names that appear week after week. We're always so pleased that you guys find these valuable and show up and come back and join us every week. It's just nice to see all of you. So thank you for that. And thank you to those of you who are joining us for the first time. And thanks to David, as always, for kicking us off. So the topic this week I hope is really useful because I think it's one of those tools in the customer experience kind of toolkit that we don't always talk about. And I find that it can be really valuable, especially when we're planning for the future, when we're really looking ahead and we're trying to figure out, can we really pull this off? And I don't know about you, but I find that I'm doing a lot of plans and revisiting plans and trying to figure out a couple different contingency plans right now. I think we're all dealing with this reality that we're in and trying to figure out what comes next. And so that's why we wanted to talk about this today, which is about using service blueprints to prepare for the next normal. I purposely didn't say new normal because everybody's calling it that. And I think we're going to have phases, right? And not all of us are in the same situations based on where you are geographically and some other things. You might have different challenges. And so we might have situations where we have to plan and then plan again in a few months and kind of evolve more than just flip the switch. So without further ado, I guess I should tell you who I am. I'm Jeannie Walters. It's nice to see everybody here as always. And these are all the ways you can reach me. We have a 21-day CX challenge that some of you have participated in, and we get some nice feedback from you, so thanks for that. But feel free to sign up for that. It's totally free. We love hearing from you on Facebook and Twitter, and of course, I love connecting with you on LinkedIn, and we also publish on LinkedIn, so feel free to follow those articles too. And then, as David mentioned, we're going to LinkedIn Live next week, which is very exciting. So we hope to see you there as well. And I've been doing customer experience work for about 20 years, a little of everything, but essentially I've been a consultant to everybody from big Fortune 100 companies all the way down to some nonprofits and smaller organizations as well, healthcare, financial services, all sorts of things. And one of the things that I know about customer experience is that it's not perfect science, right? There is an element of art and science. And that's why I like this idea of service blueprinting, because it's a tool that allows us to visualize, but also kind of dig down to, okay, what are the processes and systems we really need? And I think sometimes we don't talk about those two things in the same breath with customer experience. So why are we talking about this today? Well, right now, as we are planning, we being leaders, organizations, brands, we're all planning for a phase of reopening of some sort. We might be inviting customers back. We might just be inviting employees back to the workplace, or we're trying to figure out different ways to serve customers. And I know a lot of industries are struggling with this right now. And I know a lot of us are really trying to figure out what is the best way we can do this. What is the way not only that we can provide that safe environment, but then what does that mean? How do we need to communicate about that? How can we reassure people as we move into these next phases? And so when we talk about why blueprinting, it really is called a blueprint because, architects use these, right? We know what a blueprint is when we're building a building, a structure of some sort. We know what a blueprint looks like there. This is a little different, but the idea is the same. So architects rely on blueprints to understand structures and also to determine like, hey, can we bust down this wall or not? If you have that blueprint, it will tell you like, you better not, because that's actually a supporting wall and the whole house will fall down if you take down that wall. And those are the types of things that we want to do with our service blueprints. We want to make those critical decisions and make sure we have something that we all agree, this is what it is, and this is what it looks like kind of beneath the surface. So we can use that same philosophy when we develop our service blueprints. So one of the questions that we get, and those of you who have been here with us for a while know I love journey maps, I love journey mapping, and I think it's a really useful way to understand your customer experience. And sometimes when I bring up service blueprints, I get this question of how does a service blueprint differ from a customer journey map or an employee journey map? And a customer journey map is really focused on the customer's perspective. It's very important to get their actions, their feelings, what they're thinking, and really it's about their needs. How can we walk through the experience in the shoes of our customers and make sure we understand their needs and how to deliver on them? A service blueprint takes that information, so it really is about that customer experience, but then we drill down and we figure out, okay, how can we actually deliver on this service? What are the things that we need to do backstage in order to make sure that the front stage experience is the one that we want for our customers? So it's kind of layering the customer experience on top of the inside of the organization and what we need to do there. And I think it's easy to think that this is really difficult and challenging. And my goal today is to give you enough tools so that you feel like, yes, you can do this. And this is something that is important to your organization, because I think it is a tool that can really help us as we move into this next phase. So how do we do this? Well, this is what we're going to be talking about today. There are a couple different parts of any blueprint. The first is physical evidence. I know that's a funny name, but really that's about how or what the customer is using to achieve their goal. So that's, if they're using the website, that's where you put that. You want to make sure that you document that they're coming through on the website there. Or maybe it's walking through the front door of a store, or maybe it's calling your contact center. All of that, the way that they're interacting, that's the physical evidence. Customer actions, what is the customer actually doing? Front stage actions and backstage actions. We'll talk about these in a little bit more detail. And then there's also this level underneath. And if you think about kind of the actual experience that the customer is having as the tip of the iceberg, right? That's above the water. There's a whole lot going on beneath. And that's where those support processes come in. It might not be anything that the customer is aware of, and it might not even be things that the employees themselves can control, but we need to make sure that everything is working. And then we'll also talk about lines of visibility and interaction, because we do want to make some distinctions on our blueprint between, okay, what does the customer see? What are they experiencing? What do the employees experience? And then what has to happen way down there at the bottom of the iceberg, as I said. So I have a LinkedIn learning course on service blueprinting. And in that course, we actually had this fictional store called Jeannie's Gems. And we created this as a blueprint example. Now, this is more graphic than most of us do. A lot of times we just, type these things out and use words, and that's fine. If you want to use these little icons, you can certainly do that. But you can see here that the physical evidence line is the first line. It has a website icon, it's got an email icon, and then the store. You see the customer actions where she's sitting at the computer ordering, where she gets the email, and then she goes to the store. And so in that course, I walk through all of these things in a little bit more detail, but this gives you an idea of what we're going for, because you can see here, there's that line of interaction and front stage actions versus backstage actions. So the line of interaction is really about, okay, what is the customer doing and when do they start really interacting with the people, with the employees, and with the actual brand itself. And then the front stage actions are everything that the customer sees. They understand and see what's going on. They experience it. The backstage actions, now in this example, what we said was that an employee would have to go to the back of a store in order to find the custom order. So the customer will see them walk into that room, but they won't see what happens in that room. That's a backstage action that the employee is having. So the employee will do that. They come back out. Now, in order to make sure that the payment goes through, there's all sorts of things that have to happen, right? We have to make sure that the security systems are in place. We have to make sure that the credit card processing software and our program works there. Now, the employee doesn't necessarily see all of that, and the customer doesn't see all of that, but that's a really important support process. So you have to kind of break this up and figure out, okay, where do these pieces fit in your organization, and how can you make sure that you are delivering the experience that you promised? So the first thing we want to do is make sure that we do map the front stage actions. If you start with the physical evidence, if you actually start there, I find that that's a lot harder. What I like to do is actually think about, okay, what is the customer journey? Shocker, right? I talk about this all the time. But if we have a customer journey map, this is where you really want to take what you've learned there and put it on that customer actions, those front stage actions experience. So as you map that out on your service blueprint, then you will start identifying, okay, we say that they come into the store and they go to the cash register. What's the physical evidence of that? Well, they go to the store. What else does that mean? Do they have to park? What's the parking lot like? I know that sounds silly, but if you're really interested in the customer experience, I really like to think through that in a broader way. And then it allows us to really understand, okay, what needs to happen so that we can deliver on that. And so you want to map those front stage actions for the customer and then break that out into, okay, what is the physical evidence? What are the things that happen above that line of interaction? What happens with the different employees? When do they start interacting with employees, with contact centers, whatever? So the front stage is all about the customer. It's all about what they're experiencing. And if you think about it kind of with the metaphor of a theater, a play, if you're sitting there watching a play, you know that things are happening backstage. You don't necessarily know what happens backstage, but you know things are happening backstage in order for you to experience that front stage, what's happening on the stage. This is a similar concept. Now, you know that, for instance, the set design happened way before you got there, but you're still experiencing the set once you're watching it. So we have to think through, okay, what is the customer really experiencing in these moments? What is front stage? If you start there, that allows you to really think about it from that customer's perspective, because the point of this is to put the customer front and center. We still want to do that. That's the whole goal of this, is to make sure that we improve the customer experience. So don't get too caught up on the back end right away. Really look at that front stage and figure out, okay, what is it you want to do here? I'm also going to say here that service blueprints, I like to really figure out the scope in advance. Say, what are we trying to do? If we know from customer journey mapping, for instance, that we know that the lines are too long or the contact center queues are too long when people call about this specific thing, that's the scope of it. So you can really narrow in and make sure that you're examining what needs to happen to improve that specific point. You can do service blueprints that are much bigger, but I think for the sake of this, if you look at the scope first, that can really help you actually execute on it, actually get to those end points where you can make those improvements. The next thing we want to do, seems obvious, map those backstage actions. So this is where you think through, okay, an employee, let's say a contact center employee, gets that call, right? Well, they're interacting with the customer, but they might have to interact with a system and really find the information through a system. That's a backstage action because the customer doesn't necessarily see them do that. And then if you drill down a little bit more, that system better be working. That's a support process for them too. It better have the right information for them. If you've identified that there are certain points of that system that are not working, that's a great place to really drill down and say, okay, what do we need in order to provide the right support process for our employees? And so that that backstage action is more efficient and works better for the customer. So I want you to really think about, what is the employee experience here? What actions do they have to take? Because that's really significant. And then also, if you're dealing with technology, let's say the customer is dealing with an app or directly on a website, what are the front stage actions there? Well, they're going to see the user experience. They're going to see that user interface. They might not see, and I just witnessed this recently with a B2B client, they might not see that when they're putting in their information, it's actually going to Sally, and Sally is manually putting it into another system. They don't see that because, that's not what it feels like to them. But if we know that that's an issue, that's a great place to really dig in on a service blueprint and say, what can we do here? This is, how can we automate this? How can we make sure this support process is less manual? Because that's a lot of work for Sally. And if she gets behind, that's a really bad experience for our customers. So we really want to think about kind of pulling the thread of the customer experience. What do we need to do? And what is happening today that actually delivers on that customer experience, good or bad? And then ultimately, we want to use these blueprints to create solutions. We want to look for those opportunities where we say, okay, we know this is not working. Let's say that example I just brought up about the B2B company. If we know that, oh my gosh, this is super manual, everybody hates this process, our employees complain about it, our customers complain about how long this takes, or the fact that they don't get a confirmation email right away, or whatever, then that's a perfect example where we say, we have to figure this out. And in that B2B example I talked about, there were real limitations with what they could do. They couldn't necessarily just automate that handoff because of the different systems and because they were working with legacy systems, and I'm sure some of you can relate to this. And so what we did was we said, okay, what can we do for the customer that is automated? And so we started just ramping up different confirmation emails, different ways to communicate with them so that the customer at least had the reassurance that when they were submitting that information, it was being received and in a timely way. And then we automated so that when Sally did type this in and get it into the right system, that system was able to kick out a confirmation back to the account manager of the customer so that they could reassure them too and say, okay, here you go. This is the date that it actually went through. Here's your delivery date, et cetera, et cetera. That was all because we were able to drill down and figure out what is the actual problem instead of just saying, well, it takes too long for customers to hear from us. So sometimes you have to get creative with these workarounds, but if you can, ultimately, we made a decision that, okay, long-term, we need to look at investing in a system that can do both of these things. So now they're making bigger choices about those support processes in order to deliver a better customer experience for all of their customers. So that's ultimately the goal of all of this. We always want to make sure that we're getting to that outcome of doing something for our customers, of making sure that we are providing the customer experience that we want. Now, the other part of that I'm sure you've heard me say this for journey maps as well. I've seen service blueprinting done where people say, oh, good, we did it, yay, and it's a document, and we know now. As you know, I'm not about that. I think that tools should be used. This is a tool. Now, once you have it and you feel good about the service that you're providing, and you have a service blueprint that really does reflect what you are trying to do for your customers, then that can be used in different ways too. And so, let's say this is the ideal one that we have, and it would go into more detail than this, but let's say we have something that really works. Well, how would we use that? There are so many ways to use that today and any day, really, but these are some of the ways that I was thinking about leveraging service blueprinting as we go into the next normal. So one is, we create blueprints around delivering products and service in new ways. So let's say that you're a restaurant owner right now, and maybe you know that you're not going to be able to open up for several weeks. You know that curbside pickup has been going okay, but maybe there are things we could do differently. Service blueprinting is a great way to think through that because it's a visual way to really just drill down and think, okay, what's happening here? If we know that people are confused when they pull up, maybe we're getting the wrong orders out, back that up and figure out what are those employee actions, what are those support processes, what do we need to do to improve that? So this is a great thing as we move into these next phases of thinking about, okay, if we have to do this differently, let's think through what that really means. Same thing with if you're bringing employees back. You can really start thinking about, okay, we know that we can't have everybody lined up in their cubes like we used to. So what can we do about that? So thinking through all of those different things. The other thing you want to do is leverage blueprints for several different scenarios right now. There is nothing stopping us from doing this. Just like I said in the beginning, we're all making plans upon plans and contingency plans and everything else. Blueprints can really help you do this. They don't have to be super formal. They don't have to be super graphic or well-designed. I mean, if they are tools. And so if you can use a whiteboard or use a piece of paper and just draw that out and think through, okay, in order to get this for the customer, What do we need to do? And start mapping that out. That can really start triggering different ways of thinking. Maybe you could say, okay, what if we did curbside with an app versus curbside where they call us? What would that look like? All of these different ways that we can think about the customer experience and the employee experience as well. And, we are going into these different phases and these different time frames. You could start with one and then build on that service blueprint for the different phases. So you might have a blueprint for the next 6 weeks and then have one for 6 to 12 weeks and then on and on and on. The other thing that I've seen personally is that, a lot of us are dealing with fewer resources. We may not have the staff that we used to. So what can we do to make sure that the support processes are really helping those employees the best they can? Service blueprinting can be really helpful for that as well. And then, I really think at any point, I encourage clients to use service blueprints to train employees. It's a great way to kind of give them a snapshot and say, you know what, this is what we're trying to do, and this is where you fit. And this is why what you do is so important, both front stage and backstage. This is why we need you to make sure that even if you aren't, customer facing, you are part of this customer experience. It's a great way to do that. So as employees have to add things to their plate right now, maybe more cleaning processes, maybe, different ways of getting around the office. I know somebody I was talking to recently said that they're creating, one-way paths in the office. And he was saying, he's as far away from the bathroom as he can be. And that means that he's going to have to basically loop this entire office. It's going to take him 15 minutes to walk to the bathroom every time. Now that's a silly example in a way, but those are the types of things that we're dealing with. So if we think about, okay, these new processes are going to add time and, energy to what employees do, service blueprints can help you not only explain that to employees, but ultimately explain, okay, these are the trainings and tools that we need in order to deliver on this. And then my favorite one here is, this is a way to get leaders on board. It's really easy as people go up the chain in an organization, they actually get further and further away from the customer experience. And so it's not unusual for executives to really have no interaction with customers or the experience that they're having. If you want your leaders to support you in, for instance, giving employees more time to do certain tasks, or making sure that they have the right training and tools in order to deliver this new experience, service blueprints are a great way to communicate that with leaders, because you can even start putting in your blueprint things like, this will take 15 minutes, this will take 30 minutes, whatever you have tracked. You can use those things in order to really develop a blueprint and then share that with your leaders. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful to you. If so, make sure to subscribe. We do these webinars every Friday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific on LinkedIn Live and right here on YouTube. And if you've got a question, don't be shy. Ask in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. You're here for your customers. I'm here for you.